Property investors and buy-to-let landlords, here are 7 key changes in 2025 that you must be aware of, and I'm going to run you through them right now. So if you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon, because we're going to keep you updated with changes that affect the property market and to keep you on top of your property investing game. Okay, the first biggie is as a result of the Renters' Rights Bill, which is the abolition of Section 21 no-fault evictions. Now let's have a look at why this actually came in. In the dark old time of the 1970s, it was very, very hard to get rid of a tenant from a property. Once they were in for life. Now that made it very unattractive for people to invest in rental property, and people didn't. And it also made it very, very hard for financial institutions to lend on investment property, because no one really knew whether or not you could ever get possession of that property back again. So that's why in the late 80s, Margaret Thatcher brought in the assured short-hold tenancy, and with it Section 21. And this gave the tenant a 6 months guaranteed minimum stay in the property, and the landlord an ability to get the property back after giving 2 months notice. So what that allowed was the landlord to basically get the property back, and it made buy-to-let property an asset class that financial institutions would lend against. Now landlords aren't sitting there saying, let's evict tenants, who should we evict today? They only do it if they need to get their property back, and ultimately it is their property and they're entitled to get it back. Under the new rules, the tenant will be entitled to a year in the property before the landlord can get the property back, instead of the 6 months. And also the notice periods have increased from 2 months to 4 months notice the tenant will be given. And if the tenant is in breach in any way, then the landlord will have to go through court. And as everyone knows, the court system at the moment is a little bit of a mess. It's particularly slow, and it can take a long time to bring these cases to court. The other thing is the landlord has to wait until the tenant is 3 months in arrears before they can actually use that as a grounds for repossession in the court. So what does this actually all mean? Well, you might think on the face of it, this is all good news for tenants, but it's not. It's bad news for tenants, and I'll tell you why. What savvy landlords have already been doing is imposing stricter criteria on tenants that they will offer tenancies to. And that is basically about referencing. So what you're finding is that people on short-term contracts, or where income is not that well defined or erratic, those sort of people are not successful in referencing. Landlords are going for more A1 tenants with regular earning history from stable employment. That's what's happening right now. In the old days, of course, a landlord could take a punt on a tenant, because you had that option of getting your property back after 6 months with 2 months notice. But now the court process is so lengthy and the criteria is so strict that it's not worth going for anyone less than A1 type of tenants. And also more and more landlords now are using rental protection insurance. So these are insurance firms that they normally do the referencing of the tenant, and if the tenant passes through that referencing, then they will offer the landlord an insurance policy that protects you against circumstances where the tenant may not pay the rent. In summary, what landlords are focusing on now is only renting to tenants who are the type of tenants who are going to care about their credit history and credit score. Now the second big change that's happening this year, again out of the Renters' Rights Bill, is the whole issue with how rents are increased. Now, most tenancy contracts carry some provision for increasing rent, usually on an annual basis, and it's usually linked to inflation or something like that. Now, landlords, as per the old rules, can increase rents only once per year, but tenants can challenge those rent increases and take it through a tribunal. Now here is the very odd thing about it. If, say, the rent increases by £10 after the first year, then the tenant can challenge it. They can take it to tribunal. That tribunal might take 5-6 months to take effect. But the rent increase is only applied after the tribunal has sat down and considered it. So basically, there's every incentive for tenants to challenge every single rent increase that's proposed, even if it's reasonable. Because what it does is it delays the start date of that rent increase taking effect. So that's something that I'm not particularly happy with, but you've got to take that into account. The third change, that rental bidding wars are going to be banned. Now, there are many areas where the rental market is very hot, particularly for family-sized housing. You often get 20 people interested in renting one place. And what will happen is that the landlord or the agent will say, this property is available to let, it's £2,000 a month, and you get 3 or 4 offers, and the bidding war starts to take place. So someone might offer £2,050, someone else might offer £2,100, and so forth. So you get that bidding war. That is going to be outlawed. And the new rule says that the rent, the agreed rent, can't be more than the advertised rent. Now, I think this is a rule that is, quite frankly, nonsense. It doesn't need to be put in place, because all what's going to happen now is that advertised rents are going to be higher. So what landlords are already doing is, if the market rent is sort of £2,000 or whatever, then advertise it for £2,200. Have something in there saying offers accepted or whatever. Advertise your property at the higher rent and take offers on it. Thereby you achieve the same result. So basically that rule change is not going to achieve what the government are trying to, I don't know what they're trying to achieve, but it's going to achieve nothing. Now, the fourth change that's going to happen is a national landlord database. Now, I'm not entirely sure what the government wants to achieve by all of this, but what it is going to mean is there's going to be a privacy issue, quite frankly, with landlords. So if you haven't already done so, I would make sure that you use an agent. If you are self-managing, consider using a PO box or some other kind of address for your paperwork, because you may not want your home address appearing on a public register. The fifth change that you need to be aware of is the EPCs, and Ed Millipede, of course, the nut zero czar, is going to impose ever more crap on all of us, including landlords. The latest is this EPC thingy. So EPCs, if you have a rental property, you're going to have to achieve Grade C rating by 2030. Now, if you actually are an owner-occupier, then it doesn't actually matter. But all rental properties are going to have to achieve Grade C by 2030. Now, this is an absolute can of worms. I mean, what happens if you have a flat in a block of flats where you can't upgrade the windows? It's up to the freeholder to upgrade the windows. You can't put external wall insulation. It's up to the freeholder to do that. So there's a limit to the amount of upgrades you can make. Just using LED light bulbs isn't going to cut it when you're on the 3rd floor of a block of flats and you just are the leaseholder and the freeholder is responsible for the overall fabric of the building. And there are also issues with conservation areas, older buildings, Victorian properties, where upgrading might not be possible. And there are also areas up north or in low value areas where the costs of upgrading low value properties are simply not economically viable. So bear that in mind when you're looking at properties to purchase for your portfolio, or if you're doing any kind of refurbishment or renovation or redecoration, have a think about what you can do now to make sure you get that Energy C rating, because it's coming. The sixth change that takes effect this year is discrimination rules for renters. It's been fairly common up till now to have ads for rental property which say things like no people on benefits or no pets allowed or that kind of thing. This will be outlawed from this year. Now, it's a bit of an oddity, really. Landlords can still choose who they want to rent to, but they just can't advertise as such. So they can't disqualify people in the advertisement, but they can, obviously they're free to choose, which means choosing is basically disqualifying some people against criteria. Now, this may cause certain problems. Now, for example, there are buildings insurance policies where the terms and conditions of the buildings insurance policy says that you cannot have tenants who are on benefits, for example. So those sort of restrictions in buildings insurance policies will basically be unenforceable. So it'll be interesting to see how the insurance industry reacts to this change as well. Now, the seventh change is on stamp duty, SDLT, and this kicks in April 2025. Now, at the moment, stamp duty rates are reduced. They're reduced until the 31st of March 2025. And that's because currently the threshold at which stamp duty starts to be paid is £250,000. Come 1st of April, that will be halved down to £125,000. And also there's the reduction of first-time buyers relief on property purchases. So first-time buyers currently don't have to pay stamp duty on the first £425,000. That will decrease down to £300,000 from April the 1st. So what we're going to see, the impact of this is going to be that a lot of buyers are going to push through their property purchases in the first quarter of 2025 to avoid these stamp duty rises. And when the government create these sort of cliff edges, what happens is there's a little bit of a stampede to get these deals over the line. And then after that cut-off time, the market kind of peters off a little bit. I don't know with this one. We are going to have a March spring statement from the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. She is desperate to encourage growth. She's going to be announcing, allegedly, planning reforms to reduce the burden on getting planning permissions very, very soon. Now, I think it's likely that she will trumpet some kind of extension of the existing reliefs. I think if she doesn't, it's plain nuts. But we're going to have to see on that. My prediction is that she will. We'll see whether I am right or wrong. That's the common sense thing to do. But of course, we all know that there isn't really much common sense in economic policy currently at the moment out of this government. So let me know what you think of these 7 key changes that are going to impact you guys as property investors and buy-to-let landlords in 2025. Is there anything significant that I've missed out? Let me know in the comments below. And also, don't go away without liking and subscribing to this channel, because we're going to keep you informed of changes and keep you up to date so that you keep on top of your property investing game. See you guys in the next video. The Baker Street Property Meet is the UK's largest and #1 property investors networking event. The property market is going through monumental change right now, and at Baker Street Property Meet we aim to keep you up to date with the latest tips and tricks and insider tactics to help you keep on top of your property investing game and succeed in these troubled economic times. The Baker Street Property Meet is fundamentally about networking, because it's not what you know, it's who you know. And at Baker Street, we aim to connect you with the people to make your property journey a monumental success. There's no better place to be to further your property investment journey than the Baker Street Property Meet. So make sure you're here, you're connecting with myself and Andrew Roberts, our expert guest speakers, and 300 passionate property people each and every month. See you at the next meet. Get your spot at bakerstreetpropertymeet.com.